Welcome back. I'm Linda Kincaid. Turkey's opposition is keeping up the pressure on the government following the arrest of the popular mayor of Istanbul. Thousands of people attended a rally in Istanbul Saturday, more than a week after Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu was detained on corruption charges. It happened just before he was selected to be the opposition's candidate for the next presidential election, which is meant to happen in 2028. His supporters say the arrest was politically motivated, as some polls show that he would beat President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The mayor addressed his supporters in a letter from jail.
Erdogan gives one unfair and unlawful instruction after another. The evil he does is, once again, placing economic burdens on our nation. Even though he decides everything himself, Erdogan never takes any responsibility.
This is just the beginning. We will keep fighting. We will keep fighting and fighting.
With more analysis, we're joined by Halil Karaveli, a senior fellow at the Central Asia-Caucasus Institute. He's also the author of the book Why Turkey is Authoritarian, From Ataturk to Erdogan. And he joins us live from Gothenburg, Sweden. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
So can you just firstly start by describing what is unfolding in Turkey? Could this be a turning point?
It's definitely a turning point. Now, historically, repression has worked for Turkey's President Erdogan. He has always been able to count on popular support when he has gone after his political opponents. That was the case when he jailed the secularist army of military officers and bureaucrats, and when he jailed Kurdish politicians. Not so this time, though, when he went after and tried to crush what is Turkey's leading party, arresting his presidential candidate. Because the Republican People's Party, the center-left CHP, is the ascendant force in Turkey. It carried the local elections in Turkey a year ago, almost to the day, and it has made significant inroads into the conservative base of Erdogan. And a week ago, 15 million people, out of a population of 86 million, voted for İmamoğlu, expressing their solidarity with him. And this shows that Erdogan's autocracy, or his attempted autocracy, is unsustainable.
Yeah, it's interesting that despite the fact that the Istanbul mayor is being detained, that his party still named him as the presidential candidate for the 2028 election. Is Erdogan's crackdown energizing opposition supporters?
He has definitely energized them. And it's important to stress that the CHP, the main opposition party, which has, for the many years hadn't had much support beyond 20-25%. It received 37% of the votes in the local elections last year. And again, many conservatives, traditional Erdogan voters, are also incensed by this blatant attempt to shell democracy and the blatant disrespect for popular sovereignty by removing an elected mayor in this way. Now, I also know it's also important to stress that the events of the past week have shown cracks in the armor of the regime, because there have been many instances when the forces of order have shown reluctance to suppress the protesters. This shows that Erdogan, if he were to persist in his attempt to establish his one-man autocracy, he won't necessarily be able to count on the support of the police. And I think that Erdogan also realizes that he needs to step back from the brink. And there was an interesting sign yesterday when a critical ally of Erdogan said that those who are charged shouldn't necessarily be incarcerated. That is kind of implies that Ekrem İmamoğlu might in fact be released. He will still face charges. He will be but until he's sentenced, if he is sentenced, he could actually be released. And I also want to stress that these protests, as we said, it's a turning point. They have shown that autocracy is unsustainable in Turkey. But this doesn't mean, by definition, that democracy will be easier to achieve, because the protests have also shown that there is no purpose of unity among those who protest. They are against Erdogan, but they don't necessarily share the same objectives. Many are definitely progressive university students, but it has also been it's also been a very worrying sign to see that many of the protesters are hateful far-right nationalists. And this is a clearly worrying sign, because Turkey still remains a very divided country where Turks and Kurds are pitted against each other, and far-right nationalism is also in ascendancy.
Now, we know Erdogan has been in power for 22 years. Describe how he's consolidated his power and what his next step might be.
Now, Erdogan has always relied on allies. When he first came to power, he relied on the support of the Gülenist Brotherhood, who eventually then turned against Erdogan and tried to overthrow him in 2016. After 2016, Erdogan struck up an alliance with the far-right nationalist party, and he owes his election and re-election to the support of the far-right nationalist party. And he also has staffed the bureaucracy with the cadres that the far-right nationalist party has provided. So Erdogan relies on this. So he has been very adept at shifting alliances, coming to power first supported by liberals and Gülenists, and then when that didn't work, he continued and has now consolidated his power together with the far-right nationalists. The Turkish regime is a sort of and the challenge that Erdogan's regime now faces is in a way that was an existential challenge even before this arrest of İmamoğlu, because Erdogan has aged. He is not a long-term solution. His re-election is very much uncertain. So the regime needs to, if it wants to persist, it needs to first secure Erdogan's re-election, and second, to find a successor. And that is very much in doubt. In this case, I would say that this regime, I would predict that it will actually not endure.
All right. Interesting prediction. We'll talk again soon, no doubt. Halil Karaveli, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.